Today I want to talk about approach notes, or chromatically embellished triads is the name of a chapter in this book, I think. I'm gonna take some information from this book, Line Games by Randy Vincent. I've covered this book in a previous video, or in several previous videos actually. I'm also gonna look at this book, the serious jazz book, to Barry Finnerty. I'm taking some stuff from these books regarding chromatically embellishing triads or chromatic approach notes, bebop surround. This topic has a lot of names. So I'll explain how you can use it, what it is, and how you can use it in some different situations. So let's get right into it. Let's get started, shall we? First off, let's just look at a major triad. So let's take a C major triad. Let's play it here. We could approach each one of those notes from a chromatic note below. This is pretty straightforward. I think this is not very surprising to anybody. It's worth noticing though the difference between if I do this as opposed to this. I was either playing the chromatic note on the strong beat of the bar or the weak beat, so that's gonna create a whole different feeling depending on which one you do. And don't just play them like that. Try to, add some rhythm to it. If I think of this as 2 and 4, like a swing feel, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. What I was trying to play there was even with this kind of first step of this idea, you can still do a lot. Next, you can add a note above each, but it's a diatonic note, it's not a chromatic. It could be a chromatic note, but that's a little bit more strange. Let's say, for example, that you have a 1-6-2-5 chord progression, like maybe a gypsy jazz kind of situation. You could play both of those ideas. Django Reinhardt often played this kind of idea. So that's why he was so brilliant, because he could take a very simple concept, just the chord tones and an approach note, and turn it into music, adding rhythm and embellishments and ornamentation. And I don't think he knew really what those things were, but he understood it conceptually and musically, so that's why it's so great. So even though there are more chords than just a C major chord there, what we are hearing is kind of the C major tonality. That's why you can play that over the whole thing. Now, of course, what you can do is to combine those. The one from above and the diatonic from above and the chromatic from below. Also here, notice the difference between if I play the chord tone on the strong beat. Or if I do the opposites. they both work. This is a very common phrase, of course, that people play all the time. If you want to make it more interesting, you can play it in different places in the bar, so... And gypsy jazz guitar players like to play this stuff super fast, like in the style of Stockel or Rosenberg. He will play like... And I think they do like the kind of Django-esque type of playing. You can also consider the sixth a chord tone, so you can do this. It's like a kind of Charlie Parker sounding, or something like that. I really like that sound. It reminds you of Charlie Parker as well as Django Reinhardt. There are tons of things you can do with this, and so much. I'm kind of just scratching the surface here, but I want to show you a few ideas, and this is from one of those books. It's from the Line Games book, I think. It's the idea, this idea, for example. A little fingering tip there. I go, the last note of each cell is the index finger. I end up on the index finger. Index, index. Randy Vincent in that book, Line Games, he talks about these phrases and refers to them like as it's derived from famous melodies like Mona Lisa. We kind of just did that. This could also be solar, right? Let's try that one. So on the downbeat, with the pickup. Something I like to do a lot, I think I stole this from George Benson, is to go up from below and then a diatonic above to a note, a higher note. So you're skipping. Here you kind of run into fingering problems. I don't have a good formula, you just kind of have to figure it out. Here too, if you do it as a pickup, one. I think that's how George Benson plays it. And as a pickup, really good lick. There's of course a lot more you can do. You can do like adding to the triads. We're gonna look at that a little bit later on. Also, you could add more approach notes or but we're just keeping it with like one approach note, either from above or below. But feel free to experiment with adding more chromaticism. Now I want to move on to minor triads. We're going to do the same thing, but this time with minor triads. Are we gonna do augmented and diminished triads? You could do that, but we'll look at that a little bit in a second, but we are gonna have to treat those chords a little bit differently. But minor is the same thing, but if I have a minor chord instead, if I go from below, same idea, but from above there is an option you could also play a major 6, right? It's a little bit depending on if you're on the 1 chord or the 4 chord of a key. You want to, both those work. You could be the minor 6 or the major 6. And then we have this. That reminds you of Mozart, right? How does it go? So that's an example of a famous melody, a famous musical piece that involves this idea that it's much older than jazz. So now we could play a 1, 6, 2, 5 in minor. So C minor, A minor 7 flat 5, D minor 7 flat 5 to G7. And we could try these different ideas. Same idea. From above. And combining. You could also use this over, like, let's say you want to create C minor to F minor and maybe G7. So there, I'm just playing these triads, C minor triad, F minor triad, and G triad. If you want to add more notes to that G chord, you have to treat it a little bit differently. We'll look at that in a moment. Okay, so if you want to use this idea over, let's say, an augmented triad, let's say the G augmented triad, I would use a chromatic note from below. And then you're actually creating this augmented scale if you do that. I talked about this in my video called the Messiaen third mode. So this is an augmented scale actually. It's a 6-note scale. And if you do it on the way down, you could do a a chromatic note here, it's a chromatic note from above as well. And if you combine those, you get this Messiaen mode number 3. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I already made a video about that and I'll link to it. But if you have a G7, you can play that scale. But as I said in that video, I don't think about that as a scale. I think about it as an augmented triad with approach notes from above as well as below. And the diminished triad, yeah, you could do that too, right? Like, what is it? If I take a, I don't know, B diminished triad. But I would think of the diminished chord instead, like a diminished, the 4-part chord, maybe. Something like that, and then you're actually playing the diminished, symmetrical diminished scale. But before I show you how to use this over a chord progression, we're going to look at this over a chord progression where we're going to try to incorporate all these ideas. I'm just going to show you some more ideas from this other book, the Serious Jazz Book 2. You could, for example, play like this. So, chord tone, approach, approach. Another one is this. So chord tone, approach. F minor. It's like I'm creating classical music from on the spot. So on. There's much more to it in that book. There's like, I'm just taking a few. This one is also really good. So let's try a few of those. Let's say we're playing Minor Swing by Django Reinhardt. So I'm gonna loop those chords. So it's A minor, D minor, E7, A minor. That's pretty much it. So I'm gonna try to use the diminished arpeggio over the E7. So G sharp diminished. And I'm gonna try to do whatever I'm doing with the minor triads. I'm gonna try to do that with the arpeggio and see if that works, if you know what I mean. So for example, if I take this idea here, that's A minor, right? D minor. Then I could go. For example, something like that. We'll see what happens. the other one. And maybe this one. Now you could do this over extended chords as well. Let's say you have like a C major 13, right? I could go root, third, fifth, seventh, the ninth. So I'm approaching the same idea, but that's the sharp 11 and the 13. But it's not a strong sound. I think it works best for major and minor triad because those are very strong sound. And remember, you don't just have to do it over a C major chord if you're thinking C major triad. It works over like a C major tonality. So, but that exercise with extended chords is good to go through for just building your awareness of the extensions of every chord and everything like that. But it's not as a strong device to use when you're soloing, I don't think. But yeah, that was my little overview over approach note, chromatic embellishments of triads and what have you. So I want to thank you for your time and attention, and I shall see you next time.